Bifocal Chapter 1, J. 7, they all yelled as I pushed the barbell up, locking my arms in full extension. I lowered it down, my arms almost buckling under the weight. Lowering it slowly was just as hard as lifting it. I took a breath and exhaled through my mouth as I thrust my arms upward again. My left arm began to shake, and I could feel it lag slightly behind the right. "You can do it, Jay! You can do it!" Kevin shouted. I pushed harder and locked both arms into a full extension. 8, they all screamed. There was at least 15 people in the weight room. Every last one of them had stopped lifting and now stood around me, watching, cheering, and predicting whether I would make it. I held the weight motionless for a second before allowing it to drop just above my chest once again. 2 more to go, one of the guys said. "He's not going to be able to do it," another one added. "He's a linebacker, not a lineman." I tried not to think about what they were saying. I couldn't think about anything except the weight pressing against my chest. I took a deep breath and exhaled violently as I pushed the bar up with all my might. 9, everybody yelled. I held it at full extension, all 225 pounds of it, for a good second. It was easier to hold up with my arms locked than let it back down. As slowly as possible, I lowered it, making sure I had enough control to keep it from slamming down on my chest. "1 more to go, Jay," Kevin said. "You're going to do it. That's an order." Kevin wasn't joking about it being an order. He was captain of the football team and was used to people doing what he told them to do. "I know you can do it," he yelled. If he could have felt the burning in my muscles and the weakness in my arms, he wouldn't have been so confident. "He's done," one of the linemen called out. "He's done like dinner." He was hoping linebackers weren't supposed to outlift linemen, especially not grade 11 linebacker lifting a grade 12 lineman. "Do it, Jay," Kevin screamed. "Do it." I held the weight in place just above my chest, trying to gather enough strength for 1 more lift. "Jay! Jay! Jay!" Steve, the assistant captain, started chanting. The others joined in. "Jay! Jay! Jay!" I took a deep breath, exhaled with all my remaining strength, and pushed the weight up, my arms fully extended and locked in place. Some of the players cheered, led by Kevin. I'd done it! I'd bench pressed 225 pounds 10 times. All I had to do was lower the bar to the guards, and no, that wasn't the end. I let the weight come straight down until it just hovered over my chest. Without resting, I thrust it back into the air, locking it in place for the 11th lift. The room exploded. Nobody had expected it, which made it even sweeter. I would have laughed out loud myself if holding the weight weren't taking up every bit of my energy. "I got it," Kevin said as he grabbed the bar and helped me ease it to the guards. "No point in busting a gut." It felt as if more than just 225 pounds had been lifted off my chest. It was the weight of the entire team, those who wanted me to make it and those who— "Cops!" somebody cried as he barged into the door to the weight room. "There are cops in the school." "Big deal," Kevin said. "There's always cops in the school. Cop cars were often parked in front of the school. This was a big school, and it seemed like there was always something happening. Back at my old school, the cops only showed up to watch one of the teams play. Not just the cops, lots of cops, dozens of them. They're everywhere." Suddenly, my 11 lifts didn't seem that important. For a split second, everybody just stood there, frozen in place. At once, the group rushed for the floor. I jumped off my bench and followed along with the herd. My arms felt like spaghetti, but my legs were fine. There were lots of people in the hall. It was 2/3 of the way through lunch, and kids were at their lockers or milling around, although really nobody was standing still. The hall was like a river that flowed towards the front foyer. Whatever there was to see must be happening right there in the front doors. I moved along with the guys from the team, wondering what could bring so many cops to the school. It had to be a fight, or a huge drug bust. "Clear the way," a voice boomed out. Kids veered away from the center of the hall like the parting of the Red Sea as 2 hulking cops strode side by side right toward us. They weren't just regular cops. They were wearing thick bulletproof vests and helmets. One of them was holding a shotgun. I stared at them, frozen. Kevin grabbed me and pulled me off to the side, a split second before they marched past. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the noise of their heavy boots echoing down the hall. Their uniforms were all black. Even the insignias on their sleeves were just a different shade of black. Both men had guns on their hips with another gun strapped to the side of their black boots. As the cops continued down the hall, the center remained slightly open in their wake. The students who had been moving in one direction all started being drawn in the other as they followed the cops. The silence was replaced by dozens and dozens of voices talking at once. "You ever seen cops like that before?" I asked. "Maybe on TV or something," Kevin said, "like those SWAT guys in the movies." "But why would they be here?" "I don't know, but we're going to find out. Come on." He started off in the opposite direction, away from where the police were headed. "Where are we going?" I asked, as both Steve and I followed. Everybody else in our group had been pulled along by the crowd. "We need to see things from the outside." Kevin wasn't armed like the cops were, but he was big enough to clear a space as he moved against the flow. Kids got out of his way, and the opening remained clear for Steve and me to follow. The guys on the football team could always move people out of the way. Some of the players really liked doing that. I had to admit that I got a charge out of it myself. Kevin skidded to a stop, and we almost bumped into him. 2 more cops, regular-looking officers, blocked the doors ahead of us. Nobody could leave the school by that exit until they were checked briefly and then pushed out the door. "What now?" Steve asked Kevin. "We're not going that way. If they kick us out, we'll never find out what's happening. Follow me," he ordered. Kevin led us up the stairwell, still against the flow of traffic. We were the only ones going up. Kevin carved out a channel along the wall, and the crowd moved aside, up and around, landing to the second floor, then to the top of the floor. The hallway was almost deserted. Kevin jumped up into the air. Before I could even think to question what he was doing, he grabbed a ladder suspended against the ceiling. One side came down on a spring, as the other end remained anchored to the ceiling. I'd been in this corridor 100 times, but have never noticed that ladder. On the ceiling was a sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." Kevin ignored this sign and started up the ladder. At the top was a small trap door. He shoved it open, and a square of light appeared over our heads. Kevin climbed through the opening and onto the roof. Steve immediately scrambled after him. I was next in line. I didn't know if this was such a bright idea, but I really wanted to see what was going on. I started up the ladder. "Attention!" the PA barked out. It was our principal, Mr. Atkins. "We are in lockdown." Lockdown. We had to get into a classroom, away from the windows and behind a locked door. Lockdowns were for emergencies, like somebody waving a gun. My mind raced to thoughts of Columbine, deranged kids killing other students. Didn't they kill guys who were on the football team? A sick feeling erupted in my stomach. "All staff and students report to the nearest secure room," Mr. Atkins barked. He was trying to sound calm, but it wasn't working. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Everyone report to lockdown locations immediately." I froze in place on the ladder, one hand on the rung above my head, 3 rungs from the top, about the same distance from the bottom. I had to get to the nearest class, turn off the lights, close and lock the door, and "Hurry up!" Kevin hissed at me, peering down from the opening. "It's a lockdown!" I yelled, thinking he hadn't heard the announcement. "I heard! Get up here now so we can close the door. Consider this our lockdown spot." I scrambled up the remaining steps. As I pulled myself up, I could feel an ache in my arms. They were still stinging from the weights. Kevin offered me a hand and practically pulled me off the ladder and onto the roof. With my weight gone, the spring of the ladder pulled it back to the roof, and it hit with a loud metallic thud, causing me to startle. Kevin laughed. "You gotta cut back on the caffeine." He gave the trap door a shove with his foot, and it fell back down with a thud, closed. "Are you sure we should be up here?" I asked. "I'm up here all the time." "They let you do that?" "I never asked. Nobody's ever caught me. Until I'm told I shouldn't, I do. Besides, what are they going to do? Suspend me?" "They could." Both he and Steve laughed. "Not a chance," Kevin said. "They won't suspend me unless I kill somebody." "If you did kill somebody, you'd be suspended for only a couple of days," Steve added with a grin. "No way they'd suspend the captain or any assistant captain of the football team. At least, not during football season. Besides, we're just doing what we were told. This is a lockdown. What place could be safer than this roof?" Kevin asked. I guessed he had a point. There was no way that anybody could come up and get us unless they were already up here. I scanned the roof anxiously. Didn't snipers go up onto roofs so they could pick off people below? I felt instant relief when I realized that there was nobody here but the 3 of us. Just gravel and tar and a few smokestacks and a big metal box. some kind of cooling or heating unit sitting in the center of the roof. Sometimes there was a thin line between being imaginative and being paranoid. Steve was off to the side, bent over, hiding behind and peering over the low wall that surrounded the whole roof. He turned around and waved for us to come over. "You gotta see this," he hissed at us over his shoulder. We moved in, one on each side of him. I was glad there was a wall at the edge. I was no fan of heights, not even 3 stories worth of height. I poked my head over the top and gasped. At least a dozen police cars were stopped in the parking lot and in front of the school, lights flashing. Some of them had their doors still open, as if the cops had rushed off so quickly they didn't have time to close them. No cops in sight. I could hardly believe my eyes. It was like a scene from a movie. "There's more over here," Kevin called out. I'd been so intent on the scene that I hadn't noticed that he'd moved to the corner of the building. "I'll check over on the far side," Steve offered. He got up and started running across the roof, gravel crunching under his feet. I went over to Kevin. At least 6 more cars had pulled up onto the sidewalk and were blocking all 3 of the side exits. "Why would they need this many cops for anything? What's going on?" I asked. Kevin shook his head. "They got enough guys with guns for a World War III. And do you see those vans?" One van had on its side a big white lettering, Special Weapons and Tactics. How many of them would fit in a vehicle like that? And more important, what was happening that couldn't be handled by the regular cops? The more we saw, the less sense any of this made. "Do you see what's written on that van?" Kevin asked. "Yeah, Special Weapons and—" "No, the other one. It says Bomb Disposal." The hairs on the back of my neck went up. If there was a bomb disposal truck, that had to mean that there was a bomb. Or at least somebody thought there was a bomb. "Now it's all making sense," Kevin said. "What do you mean?" "Somebody probably phoned in a bomb threat because they didn't want to go to class. That happens all the time." "And do they react this way all the time? Sending in the SWAT guys and a bomb disposal truck and dozens of police? And look, an ambulance!" As we watched, an ambulance entered the parking lot and came to a stop beside the vans. "Somebody must be hurt," Kevin said. "Or maybe they think somebody could get hurt. I guess this is more than a phone threat," he admitted. There was a growing crowd of kids out on the field, at least 100 or more, probably people who'd been let out before lockdown or who had gone out for lunch and now couldn't get back into school. I wish I'd gone out or gotten out. 3 officers were herding the crowd further away from the school. What was happening that was so dangerous? Whatever it was, we would have been better off out there instead of up here. What if it was a bomb? How were we supposed to get away? "Here comes a TV truck," Kevin said. I turned around. A big truck with a satellite dish on its roof was racing into the parking lot. It squealed to a stop right in front of the main doors. It had barely stopped when the doors flew open and 2 men jumped out, one with a camera on his shoulder. They'd traveled no more than a few feet before they were stopped by 2 policemen. There was no way I could hear what they were saying, but there was a lot of waving of arms. They were probably going to make the TV crew get back in their truck but no. The cameraman and the reporter followed the officers towards the school. I leaned over the little wall so I could watch them. The height made my stomach do a little flip. I grabbed onto the wall with both hands, but I kept watching until they disappeared through the front doors. At the same time, 2 other men climbed out of the news truck. One went into the back while the other climbed a little ladder leading up to the roof. Within seconds, he started to raise the satellite tower. They were getting ready to broadcast, live, from right here. People thousands of miles away would know more about what was going on than we did. A second news truck came into the parking lot. It rounded the curve so fast it looked like 2 of the wheels almost came off the ground. It squealed to a stop right beside the first, and another man jumped from the vehicle, hoisting a big camera onto his shoulder. "Look," Kevin explained. A line of the black-suited cops came marching out of the school. They towered over 2 students who were crowded in the middle. Each kid was cuffed, his arms held by an officer on each side. A teacher, it looked like Mr. Singh, was walking beside them, yelling. Then one of the students was pulled out of the group, his cuffs removed. The news guys rushed forward, his camera on his shoulder, aimed at the procession. He had practically moved his way right into the line before one of the officers waved him back and he stopped moving, his camera following their path. They led the kid, who was still cuffed, to a police car, and he was shoved inside. "Could you tell who it was?" I asked. "I thought I'd recognized one of them. I think he's in my grade. Both of them were brown," Kevin said. "That much I could see, but I didn't recognize them either. But then again, from this distance and angle, I didn't know if I would recognize my own mother." "Up on the roof!" came out a loud, amplified voice. I practically jumped out of my skin. Somebody had seen us. Instinctively, we both slouched down out of sight. "This is the police. Stand up and identify yourselves," called out the voice. "Hands above your head." For a split second I couldn't understand what the voice was saying, what he meant. And then it came to me. They had to make sure we weren't dangerous, that we didn't have any weapons. Slowly I raised my hands and struggled to get to my feet. Kevin grabbed my shirt and pulled me back down with a thud. My hands were still up and my face hitting against the gravel, which bit into my skin. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "What are you doing?" "I'm just trying." "You are trying to be stupid. Come on." He crawled off on all fours across the gravel. He jumped to his feet as soon as he was away from the edge of the roof and couldn't be seen from below. Steve was coming from the far corner as well, running. Kevin grabbed the trap door and pulled it open. "Come on," he screamed at me. I unfroze and scrambled as fast as I could on all fours, the gravel stinging my knees and hands before I jumped up and started running. Steve was already down the ladder. "Hurry up," Kevin explained. I tripped down the ladder, grabbing the lip of the trap door to stop myself from tumbling headfirst the whole way down. I jumped down the last 4 steps, practically landing on Steve, who was waiting at the bottom. There was a loud slam as Kevin closed the trap door. He climbed down 1 step, jumped, landed, and rolled forward. Above him, the ladder sprang up and smashed against the ceiling. Kevin bounced to his feet, and we ran through the 3rd-floor hall. It was completely deserted. Steve grabbed the handle of the first door. It was locked. We had to get out of the hall before the police caught us. If they saw us here, they'd know we were the ones on the roof. "In here!" Kevin held open a door. Steve and I ran, bumping into each other as we both tried to go through the door at the same time. I tripped and fell into the room. Kevin slammed the door closed, turned the lock, and flicked off the lights. We were in the dark. "We're safe," Kevin said. "At least from the cops." "We shouldn't have done that," I huffed, trying to catch my breath. "We shouldn't have run from the cops." "We had no choice," Kevin said. "Do you know how much trouble we would have been in if we'd been caught up there?" "Not nearly as much trouble as we'd be in for running from the police." "You're wrong. You didn't get in any trouble for running from the police. You get in trouble for being caught running from the police." "Yeah, man, relax," Steve said. "We didn't get caught." He was right. We hadn't got caught. At least, not yet. I sat there on the floor, slumped over, and tried to catch my breath. I couldn't believe what we'd just done. Kevin went over to the door. He pressed his face against the little window and peered out the corridor. "Can you see anything?" I asked. "Nothing. Nothing at all." He sounded frustrated. Maybe not knowing was frustrating to Kevin. For me, sitting here in the dark was just fine. I was grateful that nobody could see my arms and legs shake. Kevin nudged me. "You gotta admit, that was pretty cool, right?" I nodded. "Pretty cool."